Well, ahoy everyone. How's your PyCon going? Yeah, nice. I apologize, my voice is a little hoarse from all the cool Pythonistas I've talked to, so please bear with me. But I am really excited to be here sharing with you today a project that my partner Cassandra Grenade and myself have been working on. Kind of because none of us here have ever over-engineered anything, but using over-engineered telemetry to reduce our own anxiety. So about 6 months into the pandemic, we realized that we could not probably survive if we were stuck in our one studio-style townhouse thing. So Cass had the wild idea, let's buy a boat. I was like, okay, sure, I love fixing things up. So we looked through ads and we found this 1979 Tollycraft sedan that had been sitting on land for like 3 or 4 years, which in boat terms, that's generally not a good thing. That means there's probably some things wrong with the boat. But we were kind of silly and bought it anyway. So this is the CNOT. She does float, and she does have an engine that did start at the time. But it's a single prop. The engine in it is literally just a car gas engine from the 70s. So kind of with all of that, and I've worked on cars and things before, so I'm like, this seems like a reasonable project if we have, can't go anywhere else or do anything else. So I like to describe it as an Airstream camper that floats. So as you can see, the interior decor here is very 70s. We have our safety officer here on the banquette showing you that it is safe for use. But yeah, it's a design kind of like a tugboat, and with the express purpose of kind of being like a camper you could go out for a couple night trips. It seemed like a really fun thing, and as long as we could get it to run, a reasonable project. So let's just say not all the excursions so far have been terribly successful. It is at least, well, I can check just now. Can I get out of F11? Well, I'm just gonna check real quick. All right, yeah, I think it's still floating, okay. So it's still there, even after all of this, but we've had things like the engine itself is water-cooled from water outside the boat. At one point we had all of this is a piece of the tubing that brings that water from outside the boat into the engine block. It exploded and was rapidly pumping water outside of the boat into the bilge. And this is the electrical tape reinforcing the duct tape, reinforcing the wire, holding that tube together to try and get us back from that voyage. That was also when I cleaned up after that one, realized that this was the electrical for our bilge pumps that was supposed to pump that water back out, and it had shorted out. So, we did our best to try and do all the safety inspections and things ahead of time, but we kind of just realized, both of us being experimental physics sort of background folks, that we were gonna need a little bit more observability and instrumentation here to feel comfortable taking this out for those longer camping sort of trips. Also because the gauges sometimes didn't even move. But I thought they looked very cool in retro. But even between trips, we obviously both have jobs. The marina's about 4.5 miles away from our house. So we can go over and check on it, especially now, I check on it maybe once or twice a week if we're not actually out actively using it. But that's still a lot of time in between that I wake up at 2 in the morning and I'm like, oh, shoot, is the CNOT still floating? Because even if and when I go out there, this is kind of the back deck of the boat. So you kind of have this back deck area, and you can climb up the ladder to the fly bridge, but the engine's down in the bilge there. It's really, most of the important stuff are on the bottom of the engine block. With a car, you can jack that car up and then you can climb under the car. Here I can't, so I literally have to channel my best Python snake to get underneath the engine. And also if the bilge is leaking, then I'm also laying in water. It's just not pleasant. So those were some great places that we wanted to try and put some instrumentation. So when the waters around our vessel have gotten kind of rough, we turned to our favorite tools and community to try and figure out what could we do to make this better and hopefully make it so we can sleep at night. So The questions we kind of had here that we'll address throughout the rest of the talk were, how do I actually know if it's sunk or not? Like, what do I need to measure? What are the kind of parameters here that I could actually reasonably check? How do we actually bring, because presumably that's not just one number, floating, not floating. So presumably that's a collection of data that we need to analyze. So how can I bring all that data together and share that? And then that's at the boat. And while I have slept out on the boat at the marina, I'm not going to do that permanently. So the bed is a little mildewy still. So how can I actually get that data back to my house, which is about 4.5 miles away? And with the full disposal of our machine shop, wood shop, and all of our debuggers and servers. So I would love to introduce you to Anode. Anode, I really love the rabbit ears, how we ended up with that. But yeah, so Anode is our homebrew chart plotter, or you might be able to think of it as like a cyber deck for a boat. Basically, we took all of these things that we kind of needed to happen on the boat and packaged it into one unit that, at least this one, this is like Rev 1.5 for the exterior aesthetic. We're gonna get to a nice laser cut wood version that matches the 70s aesthetic eventually. But we did spend a lot of time making laser etched connector panels and things like that, and then eventually gave up and just used the label maker. But inside Anode is basically kind of three main complicated components, which are, we have a Raspberry Pi, which is running, pretty much everything else we'll be talking about. But then I have two specialized hardware pieces in there. One is a Rack Technologies Meshtastic node. So that's going to give us some networking options that we'll talk about at the end of how we can get the data back to our house. And then while we have tried implementing this ourselves before, we ended up just buying a commercial from Yacht Devices NMEA 2000 bridge. So NMEA 2000 is basically, we'll talk more about it in a second, but it's a marine, like there's the CAN bus in your car, it's the boat version. So this was just something that translated those wires into Ethernet for us. And then we had Zigbee and Wi-Fi antennas, and that's basically it. So while I will pass you off to my co-presenter, Cass here, who is actually on the boat. Yes, live from the boat.
Hello, and welcome aboard the CNOT, our little project, or as I like to think of it as sometimes, our Pi Project Automo boat. While you're aboard, I want to give you a brief rundown of some of the safety features that we use to make sure that we're able to enjoy all of the open waters here in Seattle. Now, I promise it's not going to be one of those airline safety videos where we teach you how to use a seatbelt. No, this is much more about how open source literally floats our boat. And I'm just going to give you a high-level lay of the land, tell you where the coast is here. Sarah will get into a lot more of the details throughout the rest of the talk. But really, the key point is that safety begins with awareness. And so that means we need to know what's happening on our boat at all times and be able to monitor that as we're underway. And that data can come from a number of different places. So for instance, our VHF radio here also receives information from other boats about where they are, which way they're headed, and so forth. And we need to make sure that we have that data available at our fingertips at all times. Similarly, our chart plotter here, our commercial off-the-shelf chart plotter, gives us GPS data, route data, things like that. Those both communicate over a standard called NMEA 2000. So that's hardline bus-based, really robust, designed and works well for marine use. But the downside is it's really expensive. So if I want to go figure out what the temperature is in the bilge, I can either pay a few $100s for a NMEA 2000 base sensor, or I can pay $20 for a Zigbee base sensor and get the same information. There's also other commercial off-the-shelf devices like our battery monitor that talk over Bluetooth. Some boats don't have an NMEA 2000 network, and so some of the commercial devices you find use wireless standards like that instead. So we have all of these different sensors and all of this different data, and we use an open source project called Signal K to bring that into one data model so that we can look at it on our own custom chart plotter here and see that alongside a map, all of our different custom gauges, all in one place, regardless of whether they came over NMEA, whether they came over Bluetooth or Zigbee. And that's great for making sure that we're always aware and that we're always safe when we're on the water. When we're not on the water, at home on our couch, enjoying some shows, we really want to make sure that our boat is safe even when we're not there. And so for that, we also have that we bridge the data out of Signal K over MQTT, over Wi-Fi, over Tailscale, back to our Home Assistant instance running at home via its MQTT bridge on its side. And so that way at all times we know the temperature in the cabin, the temperature in the bilge, what the status of the electricals are, everything we need to know that our boat is ready to go out and have fun. Thanks for joining me on this little tour, and
Are you still there? No. Here, we'll check. Okay, I think we're still okay. Awesome. So now that you've kind of gotten the overview here, I am going to kind of talk us through some of she went by a lot of details there, so I'm going to show you all the diagrams and the guts of what's going on. So for the sensors and what we're doing actually on the boat, we've now talked about NMEA 2000 a bunch, which she mentioned like a couple $100 for a temperature sensor. Some of them, like the price delta between Zigbee and that, can literally be a couple $1,000. So boat does stand for bring on another 1,000, but we are trying to keep this in like a, open source project sort of budget. This is what a real fancy NMEA network would look like by having all of these things. It's based on a backbone concept. So you have one powered backbone rail that everything connects to, which is convenient and we do use to help power some of our own sensors elsewhere, even if they're not technically on the NMEA bus. So our actual diagram here, which is far less 3D rendered, is we have anode here sitting. I'm going to make this full screen again. Yes. We have anode sitting on a backbone here with the rest of the NMEA 2000 stuff. Like Cass mentioned, we have commercial devices. I mean, we do have to have the VHF for Coast Guard regulations, so a lot of that is just basically stuff we do have to have. We can't homebrew. And I wouldn't want to. It is safety critical. But then we have a bunch of other wireless options for Bluetooth and Zigbee, and there was one more, but I think these are the ones that are currently working. And so those are all basically pulled into anode. One project that we actually found, as we were kind of writing the list of things that we were going to have to build and write ourselves, it's always great when you find, oh, someone has already built this for you. So one such project that we found that was a huge, huge lifesaver was Zigbee to MQTT. So a lot of folks actually use this with Home Assistant just at home as well with Zigbee sensors, so that's kind of how we happened upon it. But yeah, so our network of all the Zigbee sensors, we've got temperatures, we've got power switches for different things like the heaters that are running in different areas. Those all via this service that we have running on anode get converted to MQTT packets. So all of that was just almost literally plug and play, which is when everything else requires so many steps, a very welcome development. So we have all of this data. It's kind of sitting on these buses. We're trying to bring it together. How are we actually going to do that? So I was absolutely floored at the complexity and just like amazing community around an open source project called Signal K. So Signal K, if you haven't heard of it, is basically, in my head, it kind of ends up being like Home Assistant, but for boats, but also if you want to pilot the boat. So it has a ton of support for basically autopilots and like actually driving the boat. It is wild and really, really cool to see what people build and do with it. But what that meant was we already had basically kind of a centralized, it has its own data model for data coming from, basically very similar ideas to what we were looking at. Had plugins and stuff that we could kind of just pull together and plug together to actually make effectively the core brains, if you will, for Anode. So when you see the touchscreen on Anode itself, you're seeing signal K. It gives us all kinds of nice dashboards so we can monitor the health of different devices or services or things that are running. It has its own app store. But importantly, it can also emulate the kind of important safety, navigation critical sort of dashboards directly on the device, and including charts with other boat locations. So now that we've gotten all of that kind of put together, we have to get it to our house. So the initial, we just want to test this, can we plumb it together sort of thing, was to just use the Wi-Fi at the marina and put Anode on a VPN to our house. We use Tailscale for a lot of our other self-host sorts of things. It's a really, really great tool. Check it out if you haven't. But yeah, we just installed Tailscale on Anode. We have that running at our house, and so it's as if Anode was network-wise at our house. And Cass had also mentioned that we have MQTT is kind of the messaging protocol we have going back and forth. So that's MQTT, if you are not familiar with it, is a pub-sub messaging protocol that works really well with Signal K. It works really well with Home Assistant, both. That's kind of their core bread and butter messaging sort of options. So on both Anode and our home servers, we run a Mosquito instance. That's basically what's actually handing the packets back and forth. So this is a lot of things to put on a diagram, but I tried to wrap it all up in a picture for visual folks like myself. So we have all of our sensors, everything on the boat side up here at the top. All of that, including the Bluetooth, goes directly into Signal K. There is no, Signal K has literally Bluetooth support and plugins, so we can drop all of that in there like that. Our Zigbee sensors go into the Zigbee to MQTT. Those get published to the Mosquito bus. Signal K, then we've configured to look for those packets that have the kind of tag from Zigbee to MQTT. They go to Signal K. They get renormalized, so kind of all the data formatting, units, everything matches what we have elsewhere, and then get republished to the Mosquito bus. Those, the Mosquito bus on Anode and at our house then are connected over a VPN, and then Home Assistant can just pick up. We just configure filtering for the right message labels, and then we have it. So let me we looked at it a few times now because I'm still a little bit worried about it. Here's literally live the boat right now. So we have right now connected, we've got our cabin temperature and humidity sensors. We have stuff in the bilge, so if the bilge humidity gets too high, that's probably not a good sign. I do know it is a little high right now, and I know I think there's a transmission. I saw a little bit of transmission fluid before I left, so I'm hoping that it's not getting worse. If so, I will probably not get to sleep immediately after I get back, and we'll have to go clean that up. We also have one of the things, at least in the Pacific Northwest, that's really important for boats is keeping them dehumidified, which is kind of hard because they're not nicely sealed units. So what that means is we have both dehumidifiers and heaters running all year round in different areas that tend to get really potentially moist. So the heaters here, we try to monitor, and I don't think it's currently working, but I have some logic in Home Assistant to basically monitor and adaptively adjust, how high the heater is running to keep that so we're not just wasting power. And you can see our MQTT bridge is connected and our current Tailscale information. So since we have all of these things being published, we also have access to things from more complicated things from Signal K, where are the other boats around us? Where is our boat? So, okay, good. It's right where I left it. We have, you can kind of see this is a marker for, we live right next to the locks to go from Lake Union out to the Elliott Bay. So there's all kinds of different Coast Guard sort of marked things here. But yeah, that, all right, we're all good there. So yeah, stop touching it. I'm feeling a little bit better. Hopefully you are too, and knowing things are still looking fine in Seattle. But yeah, see, I included screenshots just in case I couldn't get the network. But we do also have in our internal dashboards, we do, because we are nerds like this, we have uptimes for all of our services. So I have an uptimes page for the boat. But all in all, what this comes down to is our safety officer is extremely pleased. Everything passes his inspection. He's willing to come on the boat with us, even though he doesn't like climbing the ladder to the top. That's fine, he's 12. But yeah, we're pretty much all ready for this season. I think, barring that transmission fluid issue, we'll check. But yeah, I feel a lot better. You know, I had some experience with boating and like working on cars and stuff before, but it was a really fun project to kind of bring together the experience and expertise I have from like my work and academic career to something that was very practical, because I have a Prius, otherwise I don't really get to work on that. That's not a fun project. But yeah, so the kind of next steps here that we're looking at, / steps we are in the progress of, is I mentioned we have that Meshtastic board in Anode set up. So the Wi-Fi at the marina exists. They don't pay a lot for it, so it doesn't always, it's not always connected. I am actually pretty impressed at the uptime numbers that were enhanced right there. They must have paid for a plan upgrade. But regardless, I don't want to rely on somebody else paying their internet bills for me to have this telemetry. So we ended up learning about and exploring this new kind of open source there's all kinds of open source hardware for this, open source projects, but it's a protocol called Meshtastic. I'm just trying to use this to see so as the name might imply, it is a mesh communication protocol. It's not quite, to me, it kind of feels a little bit like ham radio, but like you don't need a license for it. But it's also being mesh and very short distance. You're kind of like looking at your local network and trying to hop. There are limits to the number of hops you can do, but from what I've kind of nominally seen by surveying our local Meshtastic networks in Seattle, I think I can get to Canada, actually, with the boat. And honestly, if the boat makes it to Canada, I'm gonna be so happy. Mostly we're looking at going around the Puget Sound area, maybe up to like Vancouver Island or something like that, but not any farther than that. So hopefully anywhere we would want to take our boat would actually be within this Meshtastic range, and we could just continuously have all of this telemetry while we have the boat out back to our house and be able to log it, do all of the fun data analysis stuff afterwards. So you can see this is already installed and part of Anode. My less than stellar Dremel cutout here notwithstanding, but you can buy these really neat boards that have like the displays, antennas, everything's literally all ready to go. I don't know, I'm really excited about this as a fun new technology sector to play around with, because there's, on the devices, there's actually a group chat in Seattle, like there's just the open public channel, and some of the wildest, it reminds me of early IRC, so like if you are missing that, try picking up a $20 Meshtastic device and hop on long fast. But yeah, so we are, all of that's all set up to do the Meshtastic testing. We're just literally waiting to take the boat out this season, which hopefully after I get back from this conference, this is a month and a half of being traveling away, so I'm hoping that we can actually try this out in the next couple weeks. So yeah, you can keep up with the project on our repo. The project is called Troubled Waters. And I have a link to the slides on the repo README. And otherwise, you can follow both of us on Mastodon. I'm on Mathstodon, and my wife is on Wandering Shop. So yeah, and if you're ever in Seattle, please message me, and we'll take you out on the boat. Thanks.
Hello. First of all, you and your wife are very brave. I feel like sea life and boats have their own everything. They have their own universe. Less of a technical question, but because boats are their own universe, I'm wondering like how you were able to organize your thoughts. There's so much new tooling, so many new skills, and it feels like I'm probably going to show my wife this slide deck because it's like, wow, I'm very impressed with everything you've done. How did you like organize your thoughts? How did you deal with being overwhelmed by just like all the new things that you need to learn and implement? Thank you.
It's a very good question. So we've been married 10 years, but we've had a family wiki since we started dating, basically since we started dating because we were dating doing hardware projects together. So like when we're brainstorming or trying to like just even like searching what projects are out there, some of it's just like we're sending each other signal messages. I try to remember to grab those, and literally we just have like a brain dump page on the wiki where we put all of that sort of stuff. When we were actually like building, I did all the soldering and like kind of manufacturing parts for the box itself. To organize myself, I have to draw it out on paper. Like I had lab notebooks as a physicist. Like I don't know, I can't get out of that. I don't fully understand it unless I draw it out. So I don't think I have any easily accessible. But like I get 20 different color pens. I go to the max. Like it's a beautiful schematic, and then I can go and build it and know that if I make a mistake from then on, it was just my execution. But yeah, there were a lot of late nights where we would just be sitting at the banquette there and being like, what should we do now? Also lots and lots of trips to our local marine like supply store, kind of like Vetco or like an electronics place, but it's called the Fisherman's Supply or something like that. So they got to know us, but they were like, what do you actually do? And we're like, oh, we're not fishing, it's okay. We didn't try to explain to them what we were doing. But yeah, I think, and the process definitely got frustrating and does get frustrating when we work on projects sometimes together because we're both very neurospicy people. We have, also kind of taking breaks, I think, with me sometimes is a very helpful thing. Like after we got the initial unit done, but not the Meshtastic stuff, we kind of needed like a week or two cool down before we could come back to it. But honestly, then we had better ideas and had found other things. So yeah, as a scientist, I would go with documenting whatever you can, however is easiest. So, but yeah, I don't know if that's helpful. Yeah.
I'm sorry. What's your experience with Zigbee and Bluetooth in a enclosed area? A lot of metal going around. Reliability, do you get outages, or how reliable is it?
It's actually better than, I was worried about that a lot, but it has so far been better than I expected, mostly because the boat is fiberglass and wood. There's actually not a lot of metal. It was built back in the 70s, but yeah, it's a wooden frame that they fiberglassed around. There are some metal pieces, but yeah, I realized, I went through and I was like, all right, if we put sensors here, what's between? Well, a couple layers of like MDF. So far that's been pretty okay. The actual distances things need to go do not exceed the width of the stage, basically, because the boat's only 27 foot long. So even if I put something at the very front and I'm looking at the very back, it's I think a lot of the modern Zigbee stuff have gotten pretty good, such that that's a feasible range for them.
Just to give you some suggestions, make sure it's a very corrosive environment. If you're not, you're probably aware of this, but yeah. What works now is not going to work in 6 months unless you taken some precautions of that. Good luck with it.
Thanks. Yeah, the name anode itself on boats is something, so all boats that are in any sort of salt environment, you have to put metal on the outside of the hull that is intentionally, they're called sacrificial anodes. So that's why this is a sacrificial device probably eventually. But yeah, sorry, go ahead.
How are you powering all this? Is it just running off of the marine battery on board, and that's enough? You don't show up and your battery's dead on the boat?
We have, but now we actually will know it. But no, yeah, we have a couple different battery banks like an RV would, and so this runs off our house battery bank, which is always on the charger when we're at the port. But yeah, 12 volt DC covers pretty much everything.